Ancient Egyptian marriage and family life would shock most people who assume ancient civilizations were universally oppressive to women. The reality is surprisingly progressive, especially compared to many later societies, including classical Greece and Rome. Egyptian women had legal rights that European women wouldn't achieve until the 19th or even 20th century. An Egyptian woman could own property in her own name, not controlled by her husband or father. She could buy and sell property, enter into contracts, run a business, and keep her earnings. If she divorced, she kept her property and received alimony if the husband was at fault. She could initiate divorce herself without needing permission from male relatives. She could inherit wealth from her parents equally with her brothers. She could testify in court as a witness. She could even become a priestess or, very rarely, a pharaoh. These rights weren't theoretical. We have thousands of legal documents, property records, and court cases showing Egyptian women actively exercising these rights. This doesn't mean ancient Egypt was a feminist paradise. Men still held most political and religious power. Physical domestic violence likely occurred, though it was officially discouraged. Social expectations still centered women's roles around marriage and motherhood. But compared to many ancient civilizations where women were essentially property transferred from father to husband, Egyptian women enjoyed remarkable independence and legal protection. Understanding Egyptian marriage and family life reveals a complex society where romantic love was valued, where women had agency, where children were treasured, and where family structure, while different from modern Western norms, had surprising similarities to contemporary relationships. Let's explore how Egyptians actually lived, loved, married, raised children, and sometimes divorced in one of history's most fascinating civilizations. How did ancient Egyptians actually get married? The answer might surprise you. There was no formal wedding ceremony, no religious ritual, no official government registration. Marriage in ancient Egypt was essentially a social contract, not a religious sacrament. When a couple decided to marry, the man would simply move into the woman's house, or they would establish a new household together. That was it. They were married. The community recognized them as married, and they began referring to each other as husband and wife. However, wealthy families often formalized the arrangement with a marriage contract, a legal document outlining property rights, financial arrangements, and terms of potential divorce. These contracts protected both parties, especially the woman, ensuring she would keep her property and receive compensation if the marriage ended. The contracts reveal that marriages were often based on practical considerations, combining family wealth, creating business alliances, or ensuring property stayed within extended families. But romantic love was also valued in common. We have surviving love poems written between husbands and wives or courting couples. One poem has a woman declaring, "My heart flutters quickly when I think of my love of you. It let me not act sensibly. It leaps from its place. It lets me not put on a dress, nor wrap my scarf around me. I cannot paint my eyes. I cannot anoint myself with perfume." These aren't arranged marriage poems. They're genuine expressions of romantic love and desire. Young people generally had a say in choosing their spouses, though parental approval was expected and valued. Forced marriages were rare for commoners, though they happened in elite families for political reasons. The typical marrying age was young by modern standards. Girls around 12 to 15, boys around 15 to 20. This was common in agricultural societies where early marriage meant more children to help with work. Egyptian women's rights within marriage were remarkable for the ancient world. When a woman married, she didn't become her husband's property. She retained full legal independence. Any property she brought into the marriage remained hers. Any property she inherited during the marriage was hers alone. The system recognized that relationships could fail and provided legal royal marriages mechanisms for dissolution rather than trapping people in bad marriages forever. Were completely different from common marriages and often involved incest that would be illegal and taboo in commoner families. Egyptian pharaohs frequently married their sisters, half-sisters, and sometimes even daughters. The most famous example is Cleopatra VII, who married two of her younger brothers in succession. though these were political marriages, and she likely had little personal relationship with either. Why did royal families practice incest? Several theories exist. First, maintaining bloodline purity. Pharaohs were considered divine, descended from the gods, and marrying outside the royal family would dilute divine blood. Second, concentrating wealth and power. Marrying within the family kept property and political power consolidated rather than spreading it to other families. Third, limiting rival claimants to the throne. If pharaohs married foreign princesses or noble Egyptian women, their families might challenge royal authority. By marrying sisters, pharaohs eliminated external rivals. Fourth, imitating the gods. Egyptian mythology included gods marrying their siblings. Osiris married his sister Isis, for example, so pharaohs imitated divine behavior. The genetic consequences of royal incest were devastating. King Tutankhamun, whose parents were full brother and sister, suffered from multiple genetic disorders: clubfoot, cleft palate, spinal deformities, and weakened immune system. He died at 19, possibly from complications of a broken leg his body couldn't heal. Many royal mummies show evidence of genetic disorders, shortened lifespans, and physical deformities resulting from generations of inbreeding. The practice eventually contributed to the decline of some royal dynasties. Ironically, while royalty practiced incest, commoner Egyptians had incest taboos. A man could not marry his mother, full sister, or daughter among common people. The rules that applied to gods and pharaohs didn't apply to ordinary humans, creating a two-tier system of family relationships. 23 children were highly valued in ancient Egyptian society, seen as blessings from the gods and essential to family continuity. Having many children was desirable because infant and child mortality rates were high. Perhaps 1/3 to 1/2 of children died before age 5 from disease, malnutrition, or accidents. Families needed multiple children to ensure some survived to adulthood. Infertility was considered a tragedy, and couples tried various remedies, prayers to fertility goddesses like Hathor and Taret, magic spells, and herbal medicines. If a couple remained childless, adoption was common and socially accepted. Adopted children had full legal rights as heirs. Pregnancy and childbirth were dangerous. Many women died from complications, and maternal mortality was high. Women prayed to Taret, the hippopotamus goddess of childbirth, for protection. They wore amulets and followed various rituals. When labor began, women were attended by midwives and female relatives, not male doctors. After birth, babies were breastfed for about 3 years, which provided nutrition and some contraceptive effect. Childhood was relatively carefree for the first few years. Children played with toys, balls, dolls, wooden animals, and games. But childhood ended early. By age 4 or 5, children began learning adult work. Boys learned their father's trade, or if privileged, started school. Girls learned household management from their mothers. By their early teens, most children were considered young adults ready for marriage. Family structure centered on a nuclear family, parents and children, but extended family was important. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins often lived nearby and provided support. Ancestor veneration was practiced. Dead parents and grandparents were honored with offerings and prayers. They were believed to influence the living family's fortune from the afterlife. Family continuity across generations was essential to Egyptian worldview. What can modern relationships learn from ancient Egyptian marriage and family life? Several lessons emerge. First, legal equality within marriage matters. Egyptian women's property rights, divorce rights, and economic independence created more balanced partnerships than cultures where women were legal dependents. Modern gender equality in marriage has ancient precedent. Second, romantic love and practical considerations can coexist. Egyptians valued both emotional connection and economic partnership in marriage. They weren't naive romantics ignoring practical realities, nor were they cold calculators ignoring emotional needs. They balanced both. Third, divorce doesn't have to destroy lives. Egyptian culture accepted that some marriages failed and provided legal mechanisms for fair dissolution. The stigma against divorce in many cultures creates more suffering than the divorce itself. Fourth, children benefit from being valued and wanted. The Egyptian emphasis on children as blessings, combined with acceptance of adoption, created a child-centered culture where kids were treasured. Fifth, extended family support matters. The Egyptian model of nuclear families embedded in supportive extended family networks provided stability, childcare, elderly care, and economic safety nets. Modern isolation of nuclear families creates vulnerabilities that extended family networks prevented. However, we should also learn from Egyptian mistakes. Royal incest produced genetic disasters, reminding us that keeping bloodlines pure is scientifically harmful. The acceptance of polygamy created hierarchies among wives that caused jealousy and conflict. Early marriage age, especially for girls, limited educational and personal development opportunities. Ancient Egypt wasn't perfect, but its marriage and family structures had surprising strengths. Women's legal rights, acceptance of divorce, value placed on children, and support from extended families created a social framework that, in some ways, was more progressive than many societies that came after. 3,000 years later, we're still working toward the gender equality in marriage that ancient Egyptians achieved. That's a humbling historical lesson worth remembering.